Elon Musk discovers alien warnings hidden in the Ethiopian Bible. What if the world's boldest visionary, Elon Musk, had stumbled upon a secret so ancient and so terrifying that it could redefine humanity's very place in the cosmos? Musk has revealed what he believes to be cryptic alien warnings hidden in the Ethiopian Bible messages that do not merely question history, but shatter our assumptions about religion, science, and destiny itself. For centuries, humankind has lifted its eyes to the heavens, asking the timeless question, are we alone? Yet Musk now insists that the answer was written long ago, concealed in sacred verses not meant for one forgotten tribe, but for the entire human race. If true, this revelation is not just theology, not just science, it is a blow that strikes at the marrow of existence, awakening us to a truth at once exhilarating and profoundly unsettling. And as we stand at the edge of this possibility, I invite you to reflect, to share your voice in the comments, and to subscribe, because together we will unravel the mysteries that could change everything we know about life, faith, and the future of humanity. Elon Musk claims the Ethiopian Bible holds alien prophecies of Earth's doom. When Elon Musk spoke of the Ethiopian Bible in a recent closed-door conversation, those present said his words carried the weight of prophecy itself, like thunder echoing through a fragile hall of reason. With a voice both measured and trembling, he described discovering passages that could not be dismissed as mere allegory, cultural myth, or the poetic musings of ancient scribes. Instead, he claimed they bore the unmistakable fingerprints of an intelligence beyond human, a presence interwoven with human destiny, yet untethered from earthly origin. These were not simple parables about morality, about the rise and fall of kings, or the stern voice of tribal law. These were warnings, cryptic accounts of civilizations from beyond our world who had once looked upon Earth, who had once attempted to guide us, and who had spoken with the urgency of those who knew what it meant to face the abyss. Musk described these alien testimonies as messages etched into Scripture, words transcribed by trembling hands that had witnessed cosmic fire, words intended not only for their generation, but for the unborn billions who would one day inherit the earth and its looming perils. His claim was not just historical curiosity, not a speculative note on the margins of theology. It was a shockwave, a seismic rupture between the boundaries of science and faith. To declare that the Ethiopian Bible contained alien prophecies was to merge two worlds humanity had long held apart, the world of divine revelation and the world of interstellar life. The words, Musk suggested, foretold famine sweeping like a shadow across nations, fire pouring down from the heavens, in a world consumed not merely by the follies of man, but by the relentless movements of celestial bodies, by alignments of planets, by cycles of cosmic force understood only by those who had traversed the stars. According to Musk, humanity is standing now on the very edge of those warnings, toes pressed against the precipice of doom. What struck many, however, was not only the content of Musk's revelation, but the tone with which he delivered it. This was not the casual speculation of a billionaire dabbling in esoteric curiosities. This was urgency distilled into human voice. He spoke not as an engineer chasing a dream, not as an entrepreneur intoxicated by ambition, but as one who had glimpsed the abyss and returned haunted. He suggested that passages in the Ethiopian scriptures describe flaming wheels descending from the heavens, voices like thunder that shook the mountains, and warnings of great darkness that shall veil the earth when men forget their path. Musk contended that these are not poetic abstractions, not simply religious metaphor, but coded references to cosmic events, alien visitations, planetary upheavals, catastrophic alignments. In this reading, the prophets of old were not merely speaking of morality, but transcribing experiences, encounters with an intelligence alien to our soil. For Musk, the Ethiopian Bible is not simply a relic of faith, not merely the whispered memory of an ancient people. It is an encrypted document of survival, a manual written in the language of parable, but pointing toward a reality far greater than its metaphorical shell. It speaks of a coming doom that may be ecological, technological, or cosmic in scale, a triad of threats converging upon our fragile world. He argues that the ancients did not invent these warnings out of imagination. They did not conjure them as mere mythic ornamentation. They witnessed something. They bore testimony to phenomena so vast and incomprehensible that only the garb of religion could clothe them. Perhaps, Musk mused, the same alien intelligence that seeded early human civilizations with mathematics, astronomy, and the blueprint of agriculture also left behind these words as breadcrumbs for the future, a cosmic trail across time meant to awaken us when the hour of reckoning drew near. And if so, then we are now living in the very age the warning sought to reach. We are the inheritors of the prophecy, the children of the code, the final addressees of the message written in fire and stone. And so a question rises like smoke from the fire, a question that pierces the mind with terror and awe alike. If Musk is correct, are these ancient alien prophecies not just warnings, but ultimatums? Are they not the cosmic equivalent of a final notice, the last alarm before the collapse? Are we not already watching them unfold in the slow violence of climate chaos? In the hunger that grows where fields turn to dust? In the wars that erupt over dwindling water and vanishing soil? In the fragile balance of a planet trembling under the weight of its own children? Musk suggests that what we, in our modern arrogance, call crisis is simply the prologue to a greater reckoning, foretold thousands of years ago. The storms are not random. The darkness is not accidental. The prophecies were not metaphor. The age of warnings is over. The age of consequences has begun. And Musk, standing as both prophet of technology and prisoner of his own knowledge, seems to echo the very voice of those ancient scribes. Heed the warnings or be consumed by them. In this vision, the Ethiopian Bible is less a book of distant theology and more a living testament that crosses time, carrying the breath of alien witnesses into our present day. If Musk is wrong, then his words are madness, a fevered blending of myth and science. But if Musk is right, then humanity stands on the knife edge of extinction or transcendence. And the pages of an ancient book hold the key to whether we rise to the stars or fall into oblivion. Hidden codes or alien messages? Musk reveals what scholars missed for centuries. For centuries, scholars have combed through the Ethiopian Bible, the Book of Enoch, the Apocrypha, and countless passages that diverge from the familiar canon of Western Christianity, sifting through its verses as though it were merely an artifact of human imagination. They debated its theology, weighed its mythology, admired its poetic visions, and cataloged its strangeness in the dusty ledgers of academic thought. Yet, according to Elon Musk, all their careful analysis has been a kind of blindness, a refusal to see what was always hiding in plain sight. He argues that the academic world, shackled by its presumption that the ancient texts are purely the inventions of human minds, has failed to recognize a deeper reality. If one strips away the cultural metaphors, the moral symbolism, the veil of ritual language, what emerges is not theology but technology, not myth but memory, not mere allegory but encoded description of beings who came from beyond Earth. Musk speaks with the conviction of a man who believes he has pulled aside the curtain of history to glimpse the machinery hidden behind it. He points to passages describing the Watchers, those celestial figures who descended to guide humankind. For theologians, they were angels, guardians of divine order, beings dispatched from heaven by God's command. But Musk insists they were something different, alien visitors so advanced in their presence, so radiant in their power, that the ancient eye could only mistake them for gods. The descriptions of their luminous garments, shimmering like metal, their ability to cross the sky like fire, their words of judgment in warning these, Musk suggests, are not abstractions of the spirit, but literal accounts of an alien presence walking among men. If angels appeared as fire, was it not perhaps the fire of propulsion? If they descended in wheels of flame, was it not perhaps a craft? The suggestion is blasphemy to some, liberation to others, but Musk delivers it as though it were the most rational conclusion in the world. Most striking, he says, are the encrypted sequences woven through the text. The Ethiopian Bible, unlike the stripped-down canon of the West, preserves numerical structures, repetitions, and hidden orders in the language that scholars dismissed as stylistic ornament. But Musk sees something else, is of repetition, coded sequences of names and numbers that seem to correspond eerily with astronomical alignments, constellations traced in the arrangement of words, planetary cycles hidden in the rhythm of verse, even solar flares and cosmic disturbances mapped into the structure of a sacred sentence. To Musk, these are not accidents of language. They are the fingerprints of design, the whisper of intelligence, inscribing warnings into the text like a time capsule. Could it be, he asks, that these codes were not written for their own age at all, but for ours, meant to be unlocked only when humanity had achieved the scientific literacy to decipher them? If so, then the Ethiopian sages were not merely preserving religion, they were relaying an interstellar message. Historians have dismissed such theories in the past, filing them under pseudo-archaeology, conspiracy, and fantasy. But Musk, with his reputation as a man of science, innovation, and unrelenting pursuit of the improbable, lends the claim a sudden and dangerous credibility. He argues that our arrogance has blinded us, that we assume the ancients were ignorant of the stars, when in fact they may have been entrusted with knowledge greater than our own. Where we mock them for superstition, they may have been carrying the burden of revelation. Where we saw primitive cosmology, they may have been echoing the language of visitors who had already mastered the architecture of interstellar travel. We laugh at the idea of gods from the sky, but Musk warns that our laughter may be the sound of our own undoing. Consider, he urges, the symbols, spirals that mirror the Milky Way's arc, geometric patterns identical to orbital mechanics, descriptions of chariots of fire that match eerily with modern accounts of unidentified aerial phenomena, the so-called UFOs that haunt our skies with their strange and silent maneuvering. Consider the timing, references to cycles of catastrophe every several thousand years, aligning suspiciously with geological records of mass extinctions, asteroid impacts, and sudden climate shifts that reshape the Earth. Are these coincidences, Musk asks, or deliberate signals encoded in the only medium the ancients could trust? Scripture, the sacred vessel through which their warnings might survive empires, plagues, and the long decay of time? To Musk, the answer is clear. The echoes are too sharp, the parallels too precise. These are not random metaphors but deliberate messages, and humanity has been deaf to them, dismissing them as myth while walking blindly into the very disasters they warned against. And so the question burns brighter, rising like a flame that refuses to be smothered. Were the Ethiopian sages encoding messages for a distant humanity, weaving knowledge into the threads of myth, or were alien visitors themselves dictating words meant to echo across millennia? Musk believes the latter. He insists that the evidence is too heavy, the resonance is too exact to dismiss as coincidence. For him, history is no longer a closed book but a cipher, its pages vibrating with the hum of hidden truth, waiting for the moment when we would at last have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. He warns that the cost of ignoring this possibility is not academic embarrassment, not a theological squabble, but nothing less than human extinction. If the messages were warnings and we fail to heed them, then we are the fools who discarded the life raft while drowning. To Musk, the great tragedy is that we have lived in the shadow of these messages for centuries, laughing at them, theologizing them, dissecting them, turning them into children's stories, while the clock of doom ticks louder and louder. He reminds us that arrogance has always been humanity's downfall, that empires fall when they ignore the whispers of fate, that civilizations collapse when they mock the signs of their fragility. If the Ethiopian Bible is indeed a cosmic manuscript, then our laughter is the laughter of Rome before its fire, the laughter of Atlantis before its flood. And in this light, Musk is not merely offering an interpretation. He is issuing a plea, a warning, a philosophical cry for humility. What if the ancients saw what we cannot yet imagine? What if the watchers were not guardians of heaven, but emissaries of the stars? What if the cycles of catastrophe described in holy language are not mythic punishments, but astronomical inevitabilities? To ignore these questions, Musk insists, is to gamble with the survival of our species. And so the Ethiopian Bible, long dismissed as apocryphal curiosity, becomes in Musk's telling something else entirely, a survival manual encrypted in metaphor, a cosmic message folded into human language like fire wrapped in clay. The scholars who dismissed it as myth, Musk says, were reading only the surface of the text. They were like children playing with a locked chest, never imagining that inside it lay the inheritance of a civilization. And now, at the dawn of a century filled with chaos, climate disaster, nuclear dread, artificial intelligence running beyond control, we may at last be living in the very age the codes were written for. The choice is ours. We can continue to read the words as allegory, as the fantasies of an ancient mind, or we can dare to treat them as warning, to act with the urgency of those who recognize that survival may depend upon whether we finally listen. The shocking connection between Mars, Musk, and the Ethiopian Bible. If Musk's claims about alien prophecies shock the world, his attempt to link them with his mission to colonize Mars electrifies it even further, igniting a conversation that feels less like speculation and more like destiny announcing itself. He insists that the Ethiopian Bible does not merely warn of doom, but points with haunting precision to humanity's salvation among the stars, as if the very ink of its ancient verses was spilled not only for the past, but for us, the fragile inheritors of Earth's perilous future. Musk draws attention to verses that speak of a red wandering star where the faithful might find refuge, a celestial body described with uncanny resemblance to Mars, burning like a coal adrift in the void. For centuries, theologians have comforted themselves by calling this metaphor allegory or poetic fancy. But Musk counters with urgency. No, this was literal. It was a pointer, a cosmic signpost to the very planet he has dedicated his life to reaching. To him, Mars is not merely a technological challenge, not an engineering problem waiting for innovation. It is destiny, whispered to us from across millennia by ancient voices who saw what Earth's future would become, and knew that survival lay not in clinging to a dying home, but in carrying the flame of humanity into another world. The alien warnings encoded in the Ethiopian Bible, Musk suggests, anticipated not just the ecological collapse we now measure in rising seas and dying forests, but the wars over dwindling resources, the famine gnawing at our children's futures, the existential threats multiplying in the wake of our own arrogance. They knew humanity would one day stagger to the edge of the abyss, and so they left a roadmap etched in scripture. Survival lies beyond Earth. His Mars mission, then, is not merely an entrepreneurial dream dressed in rockets and ambition, but the fulfillment of a prophecy written long before Silicon Valley, before Cape Canaveral, before humanity even knew the word planet in its scientific sense. When rockets rise in trails of fire from Florida's coast, Musk claims, they do not rise by his will alone. They rise on the momentum of an ancient cosmic directive, an echo of intelligence older than our civilizations urging us to carry our fragile light into the dark before the darkness consumes us here. And is it not compelling, he asks, that Mars itself, of all the planets, seems both hostile and welcoming? A barren wasteland, yes, a graveyard of dust and silence. Yet beneath its soil rests frozen water, the substance of life. Its atmosphere may be thin and deadly, but it is malleable, changeable, as though waiting for our hands. Its day length mirrors our own with eerie familiarity, as if mocking us with the memory of home. Its landscapes are barren, but its potential is vast. A frontier not of conquest, but of renewal. Almost as if it was prepared, almost as if it was chosen. Musk's challenge hangs in the air like a riddle. What if Mars has been humanity's lifeboat all along, waiting silently for the moment we finally awaken to our peril? What if the red planet has always been our ark, waiting for us to recognize it not with the eyes of conquest, but with the eyes of necessity? The connection deepens when one considers Musk's own obsession with colonization, which he does not describe in the cold language of expansion or empire, but in the trembling language of duty. To him, Mars is not a playground for the wealthy nor a trophy for human pride. It is, in his words, the ark of humanity, the vessel upon which the continuation of our species may depend. And if the Ethiopian Bible truly encoded warnings of alien origin, if ancient hands really transcribed words whispered from the stars, then Musk believes his mission is not invention, but obedience. to heed the message written thousands of years ago, and to ensure humanity's survival by acting not as an owner of technology but as a servant of destiny. In this light, Musk himself takes on a mythic dimension. He ceases to be merely a CEO, a man whose companies build cars and rockets, and becomes instead a prophet scientist, a bridge between the sacred and the technological, between the past and the future, between Earth's soil and the silence of the stars. To his followers, he is no longer simply an innovator, but a vessel, the very instrument through which ancient alien voices are heeded. He becomes the man who listens where others scoff, who sees pattern where others see myth, who dares to imagine that the words of prophets were not mere poetry, but a directive across time. Whether one sees him as Messiah or madman, there is no denying the resonance of his vision. Humanity's fate may hinge not on the strength of its armies or the wealth of its empire, but on whether it dares to take seriously the possibility that its destiny was mapped long before it even dreamed of destiny. And in this, Musk's mission becomes not merely technological, but existential. It asks us, are we willing to trust that our survival requires more than science alone? Are we willing to see in Scripture not only myth, but map, not only faith, but foresight? For Musk, the answer is unambiguous. He does not ask permission from scholars or priests. He acts because to delay is to DAD. And as his rockets pierce the heavens, they seem less like machines of ambition and more like flames of continuity, carrying humanity toward the world the ancients called a refuge, the red wandering star that now calls to us with terrible urgency. Musk becomes, in this telling, the hinge of human history, the figure through which ancient prophecy meets modern possibility. And if his words are true, then the Ethiopian Bible was never simply a relic of the past. It was always a letter written to the future, a cosmic warning that found its reader at last. Musk warns, are we ignoring the alien red flags written thousands of years ago? In his final words on the matter, Musk did not speak with triumph, but with dread, for dread is often the most honest companion of visionaries who glimpse too far beyond the present moment. He warned that humanity stands at a crossroads, trembling like a traveler confronted by two roads, one leading to survival and transcendence, the other to oblivion. The alien red flags written into the Ethiopian Bible, he declared, are not poetic curiosities or gentle suggestions whispered from antiquity. They are dire ultimatums, etched across time, warnings whose very purpose is to confront us with the starkest truth. The universe is not obliged to cradle our existence, and survival depends on whether we are willing to listen. The question is no longer whether the warnings exist, they do, printed plainly in ink, preserved by the stubbornness of history, vibrating with echoes from another intelligence. The question, he said, is whether humanity will listen before it is too late. He pointed to the chaos already unfolding, chaos that we so often pretend to be accidental or temporary, but which Musk insisted is nothing less than the beginning of the ancient script replaying itself before our very eyes. Global warming spirals beyond control, melting ice that has endured for millions of years, releasing seas that swallow cities built on human pride. Nuclear weapons hang like a sword above our heads, their silent menace a reminder that we have harnessed fire but not wisdom. Artificial intelligence accelerates beyond the frail capacity of our ethical frameworks, growing not like a tool in our hand, but like a storm that no one can stop. These, he warned, are not isolated crises born of our mistakes. They are the very birth pangs described in the ancient texts, the tremors that announce a greater upheaval, the labor pains of a species teetering between death and rebirth. And if we continue to ignore them, if we continue to soothe ourselves with the narcotic of denial, then we will walk blindly into the abyss the ancients tried desperately to save us from. Musk urged governments, scientists, and spiritual leaders, those who cling to their separate towers of pride and doctrine, to set aside their divisions and face the truth together. He asked the question that burned not only in his mind, but in the marrow of existence itself. Is it arrogance or cowardice that prevents us from taking the ancient warning seriously? Is it arrogance to imagine that we, in our fleeting moment of power no better than the millennia of wisdom preserved in sacred text? Or is it cowardice, the fear of facing a truth too badass, too shattering, too demanding for our fragile egos to bear? For what is more dangerous, Musk asked, to believe too much in prophecy, to risk humility before mysteries we cannot fully understand, or to dismiss it until the fire consumes us, until the flood washes us away, until the silence of extinction is our only answer? The Ethiopian Bible, Musk insists, is not simply scripture, not merely a relic of tribal faith or a curiosity of religious history. It is a survival manual, a map left behind by those who saw farther than we ever could, who understood not just the cycles of Earth, but the cycles of cosmos. It is the echo of a cosmic intelligence, an intelligence that may have walked among us, spoken to us, encoded its warnings into language we could preserve but not yet understand. Across the centuries, through the rise and fall of kingdoms, through the decay of empires and the silence of forgotten tongues, that intelligence still whispers. It whispers in the verses of prophets, in the visions of watchers, in the trembling of the earth and the roaring of the sky. And we, standing on the knife's edge between extinction and transcendence, must decide whether to hear it or to turn away. If Musk is wrong, then humanity loses nothing by preparing. If he is wrong, then at worst we have built ships too soon, safeguarded too eagerly, prepared too carefully. But if he is right, if alien warnings were truly woven into sacred text, if prophecy is not myth but message, then ignoring them is the gravest folly we could ever commit. For in their silence lies our doom, and in their words may lie our only chance to endure. The cost of preparation is nothing. The cost of dismissal is everything. Perhaps the greatest irony of all is that Musk himself, the man of science, technology, and rational engineering, has become the one to tell us to heed the prophets. A man who forged his reputation on equations, rockets, and machines has now become the bridge between the rational and the mystical, the scientific and the spiritual, the future and the past. He has become the paradox humanity must face, the embodiment of a choice that no longer belongs to him alone, but to all of us. He unites what we once thought irreconcilable, the cold precision of reason and the burning fire of revelation. And in that paradox, he forces us to ask whether perhaps our categories have always been too small, whether what we called myth and what we called science were never enemies, but halves of a larger truth waiting to be reunited. Will we dismiss his warnings as the ravings of a man too enamored with myth, too blinded by his own obsessions? Or will we recognize that sometimes the oldest stories hold the deepest truths, that in the cracks of ancient scripture lie messages not from gods alone, but from the stars themselves? Will we dare to believe that our ancestors preserved not fantasy but memory, not superstition but instruction? For Musk, the choice is clear. Ignore the warnings, and humanity may perish, not gradually, not politely, but suddenly, catastrophically, swallowed by the very forces the ancients warned us of. But if we heed them, if we dare to see beyond the veil of history, beyond the pride of modernity, then perhaps we can still write a destiny not of doom but of transcendence. Perhaps we can still escape the abyss and step into the cosmos not as fugitives, but as heirs. Perhaps we can still fulfill the dream that ancient voices once dared to dream, that humanity could rise beyond Earth, beyond fear, beyond the silence of extinction, and become part of the great chorus of civilizations written into the stars. For in the end, Musk reminds us, the question is not whether the warnings are real, but whether we are humble enough to listen.